to the Hoop Heads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkle tonight, talking some NBA. There hasn't been a whole lot of big developments since we talked last, Jay, but we'll hit through these minor transactions and
Yeah.
little things that are
Okay.
going on around the league.
All right. Now, there's going to be a lot of talk today about does this excite LeBron James? That's the that's the that's the modus operandi. And I meant to wear my LeBron jersey today, and I forgot. I was going to wear it for the pod. Anyways, the first thing that we're going to talk about, Mike, is DeAndre Ayton to the Lakers. I don't think we talked about that last week. It was official. It's official. I think we may have mentioned that it sounds like it was going to happen. If I'm LeBron James, do I get excited that DeAndre Ayton is a center on my team?
I would have to think the answer to that question is no.
Oh,
Your thoughts?
I agree. So here's my follow up question. Jackson Hayes signed a 1 year deal. If I'm LeBron James, am I excited that now I have DeAndre Hunter and Jackson Hayes as my two centers on my roster?
No, I'm not excited about that in any way. I played with Jackson Hayes already, and I know what he is. And although Jackson Hayes was certainly better once Luca arrived, he clearly is not a difference making player for the Lakers. And I would argue that DeAndre Ayton fits that same bill, not a difference maker. Although, if you go back to Phoenix's run to the NBA Finals, that version of DeAndre Ayton, and keep in mind, DeAndre Ayton is only 26 years old, that the version of DeAndre Ayton that played for the Phoenix Suns during their NBA Finals run was a guy that clearly has flaws, but defensively, he was able to do some things in that particular playoff run that he really hasn't demonstrated at any other point during his career. And he's one of those guys that when you look at what he puts up from a numbers standpoint, you think to yourself, wow, this guy, he's really figured it out. And he really does contribute a lot more than what you think. What do you, let me ask you this. And I just looked this up because I honestly had no idea. So I was curious. What do you think are DeAndre Ayton's career averages, points, and rebounds per game?
12 and 9.
16.4, 10.5. So statistically, right, a 26-year-old guy
What did he do?
who
What did
was
he do last year, Mike? In Portland when
14,
he
14 and 10.
okay.
So not that far off of his career averages. You can delude yourself into thinking that DeAndre Ayton is better than he is when you look at just the statistical profile. 16 points, 10 and a half rebounds, 26 years old, a guy with a pedigree who was the number one overall pick in the NBA draft. And if you're the Lakers, you pick him up for $8 million. There's theoretical room for you to be excited about DeAndre Ayton. Is LeBron excited? I would guess not. DeAndre Ayton averages for his career. How many free throws per game do you think he averages as a 7'1" athletic beyond belief guy?
3.
2.3.
Yeah.
So I think the thing with DeAndre Ayton is that he doesn't really attack the rim as a pick and roll finisher or a lob threat, which is typically one of the styles of player that succeeds. I'm thinking more now with Luca as opposed to specifically with LeBron, but Luca, anybody who's played with Luca who is a lob threat has feasted with Luca, who is probably, along with Trae Young, one of the two best lob passers in the game. And DeAndre Ayton really doesn't do that. And then conversely, the other type of player that you want to put around LeBron and Luca at the center position is somebody who's a stretch five who can shoot threes. And DeAndre Ayton in his career has averaged 0.3 threes attempted per game and he's shooting 23% on said threes. So he doesn't stretch the floor. So then you look at it and you're like, he's not a lob threat. He doesn't shoot threes, but yet he averages 16 and 10. What kind of shots is he getting and taking? Which means he's a good mid-range shooter. He's a guy that has a pretty decent offensive bag facing up from 17 feet, but he's not posting up and punishing little guys, which is what you'd want him to do against when you talk about Luka and LeBron pick and rolls, right? You're trying to get a switch and get a little guy onto Ayton or get a big guy switched on to either Luka or LeBron. And now Ayton really can't punish those guys because he doesn't go down inside and he's not super physical and he doesn't get to the line. He doesn't shoot threes. The question becomes again, what does he really do for your team other than put up kind of meaningless stats? And other than that 1 year in Phoenix, he really wasn't impactful as a defensive player. And then you combine that with all these things that we're talking about statistically and his age and his pedigree. And yet basically Portland paid him $25 million to go away, which is not exactly a ringing endorsement of him as a
work ethic
part of your basketball team. Yeah, his work ethic, his attitude, whatever, however you want to slice it. And Phoenix obviously couldn't wait to get rid of him either. So it's two teams who have given up on a athletic 7-foot guy who was the number 1 overall pick in the draft and is still only 26 years old. And two teams that basically couldn't wait to get him out the door, which doesn't bode well for where he's at moving forward. And it doesn't bode well for Luka and LeBron.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not excited. And Jackson Hayes, we've been down that road. Like that's not something that's I'm like, woohoo. I'm excited to play with him. All right. So I guess let's just stay in the center world. The Jonas Valanciunas trade. You know, he was supposedly going to go to Greece, Mike, right? Play for Olympiacos. But the Nuggets said, no, you are not leaving. You are an important piece for backup for Jokic. It's an interesting situation, right? Because he kind of wanted to go to Olympiacos, which I don't know why you wouldn't want to play in Denver. I mean, maybe there's a reason that I don't.
Maybe he wants to play more.
I guess, but I mean,
you're not going to play a bunch of You're not going to play a bunch of too big lineups if you're Denver. We're not often going to see Jokic and Valanciunas on the floor together, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, you're right. But that's it was just kind of interesting that he was trying to get out and the Nuggets are like, nope, you're not, it's not happening. So yeah. Really, really pulling out all the stops for the information tonight. All right. Yesterday the Clippers.
Wait, hold on. There's another part to that.
Oh yeah, what's that?
There's another part to the Denver story. So you saw that Jokic today basically tabled his extension talks and said he wasn't going to talk extension he said he would make
more.
Until
I saw that he would make more money if he waited till next year.
Yeah, it's not. This isn't an indictment of Denver or what they're trying to do, but basically he can sign a bigger contract. Right now, he's eligible to sign a 3-year, $200 million extension. If he waits until
he'll make 60 more million
off season, he can make, according to Bobby Marks, he could add a 4th year for 77 million per season. So you can see why he might want to wait.
Yeah. All right. Which that's not surprising. All right. The trade yesterday, Mike. I guess that's the next thing we'll talk about. Does this trade excite you? Norm Powell to Miami, John Collins to the Clippers, Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson, and a 2027 Clippers 2nd-round pick to the Jazz. Does this trade do anything? What does this trade do if I'm the Clippers and I'm getting John Collins and not having to have Norm Powell? Is this just a money move? This is a money move, right?
It's a money move. It's a long-term. Norm Powell is 32. We don't want to pay him or sign him to a 3-year extension, pay him a ton of money. And basically they're getting off of having to pay Norm Powell 2 or 3 years down the road. That's the benefit
Th-
for the
Does
Clippers, and
does
then they
this
kind of
make does
get
this
John
make my
Collins for their trouble.
does this okay? Does Miami get better for by getting Norm Powell?
Yes, but I don't know if your big three is Bam, Tyler Hero, and Norm Powell. I'm not sure what you really have going there. And it makes Miami better. And Miami really didn't give up anything of significant value that was an important part of their team, right? Kevin Love barely was contributing last year. You give up a second round pick.
Kyle Anderson. What about Kyle Anderson?
I mean, Kyle Anderson can be a valuable player, but he really wasn't playing for Miami. And so you gave up two non-rotation players, at least for Miami. Again, I think Kyle Anderson maybe still has something left in the tank that he could contribute, but he wasn't doing that in Miami. So Miami essentially gave up next to nothing in order to bring in Norm Powell, who was a borderline all-star last year. Now, did he catch lightning in a bottle? Was that his best season? Is he going to be on a downward trajectory, or is he maybe still sort of capturing some late career magic? I don't know. But Norm Powell is a good player. He's going to help Miami. But what are the Heat if Tyler Hero, who is basically a one-dimensional offensive player who doesn't play a whole lot of defense, and then you have Bam, who is a really good defensive player and is okay on offense, but at this point in his career, I don't think we have to worry about Bam developing into a go-to guy or a number one option on a really good playoff team. He's going to be better suited as the second, third, maybe even fourth option offensively, at least, and then bring what he brings on the defensive end of the floor. If you're building, those are your two best guys. And then Norm Powell is a good offensive player. I would say an average defensive player. I don't know what you have if you have those three guys, even with the problems that the Eastern Conference has across the board. I still don't know that this moves Miami. I mean, I think they're still probably at best a playing team. I don't think they crack the top six with that
Yeah.
group. And think about what the Cavs did to him in the playoffs, and think about how much the Cavs enjoyed hunting Tyler Hero. And that's not going to change. He's not going to suddenly become a great defensive player. And if he's your best player, maybe you think Bam's the best player, but regardless, he's one of their two best players. When you're being mercilessly hunted in the playoffs, it's not a good sign. So I think Miami got better, but does that make them the seven seed instead of the 9 seed? Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So then the next part of this is there's rumors that Love is getting bought out, and there are going to be several teams that are going to be interested in signing him. If you get him to a veteran minimum, do you sign him if you're the Cavs, or is he not adding anything?
I don't think he really adds anything. If you're adding Kevin Love, you're partly adding him for the nostalgia and just as a means of saying thank you for what he did for the franchise back in the heyday of LeBron and the Cavs. So I'd be okay with it, but I don't think he adds anything meaningful in terms of what they're going to do on the floor. I think at this point, Kevin Love has become he's become more of a contract than a player at this point.
Okay. All right. So then the other Kyle Lowry returning to Philadelphia.
So can we talk about the Clippers quick? Can we talk about the Clippers
Sure.
point of view there?
Yeah. Sure.
So
Sure.
I don't know if you have any thoughts, but when I look at the Clippers and I know that uh, they've sort of set themselves up and paid James Harden, I believe, 80 million over the next 2 years, which seems like an awful lot of money. But what they've done is align James Harden's contract with Kawhi Leonard's 3-year extension, which I believe, started for him last year, where he signed for whatever 3 years,
Yeah.
150 million. Yeah. So both of those guys, I believe, will be expiring after the 27 season. So basically the summer of 27. And that'll clear a large amount of money off the books, which is one of the reasons why I think that the Clippers didn't want to sign Norm Powell to a longer extension where it
They didn't
might
want to be
involve him.
hamstrung. They didn't want to be hamstrung, right?
Yeah, they didn't want to they wanted to be able to open up cap space and be able to spend money in the summer of 27, whatever that spending of money in the cap space looks like, which under the new rules and agreements, I don't know exactly. Teams are still, I think, trying to figure out how do we make this work and what does it look like. But I think the Clippers are going to ride with the current iteration of the team as constructed, adding John Collins, and you play with 2 years for with Harden and Kawhi,
Yeah,
and
and John
then
Collins is off
two
the
year,
books next year too, so he's
yeah,
he's
so
an
2 year,
expiring.
right, so
So
right, so 2 years from now, you're basically going to have a pretty clean cap sheet where you can now start to reinvent what the Clippers look like. And the one thing that you can say about the Clippers is they have gone from a place that nobody would even remotely consider ever going to play to now with the Intuit Dome and with Ballmer's money and just with the relative competency of the organization, obviously compared to what it was like under Donald Sterling, you now, if you're the Clippers, you can rightfully believe that when you do kind of clean house and start over, that you're not just reliant completely upon luck. You still have some things now that might allow you to attract free agents. You're in LA, you've got Ballmer's money, you got one of the best arenas in the league. There's some things now about the franchise that make it easier to do a reset. And I think that was part of the Clippers' thought process on this trade when it comes to not signing Norm Powell. It's just kind of looking ahead to the future, riding whatever's left of this Harden Kawhi era for the next 2 years, and then come 2027, they start to look at how do we remake our team and what's the next phase of Clippers basketball.
yeah, I don't know what the next phase is. It's a reboot is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's going
Yep.
to be a reboot.
Yep. Yep.
Um, still going to be better than whatever it was under Donald Sterling. Okay.
No question.
Lowry signs a contract to stay with Philly. That doesn't really do anything, right? I mean, just 20th
Doesn't do
season.
anything. He's an insurance policy against, because you look at the Sixers backcourt and you've obviously got Maxey, you've got Jared McCain, who had a great start to the season last year in his rookie year and then went out with the injury. And then you got VJ Edgecombe, who comes in, and I know he had a really big summer league debut and put up 28 in his first game. And so people are excited about him. And so theoretically, those three guys should be the 3 guard rotation. And Kyle Lowry, I guess, would be insurance against one of those guys going down. I can't imagine Kyle Lowry's going to play any kind of serious minutes. But as a veteran guy, professional in the locker room, somebody to work with the younger guards, you didn't commit a whole lot of money to him. Makes sense for him to go back to a place that he already has been, and they're comfortable with him. He's comfortable with them. So probably all things being equal, a good signing behind the scenes probably doesn't have much of an impact in terms of Kyle Lowry's actual production on the floor.
Yep. Okay. I guess the next piece, we're really jumping around a lot. There's not really a lot of big stories, Mike. The next piece of news was that Banchero got a 5-year rookie contract extension, $287 million. It could reach $287 million. The deal includes a player option. He's the first for a rookie max since Luka receiving the player option. I mean, it cements what they have. I mean, it's no surprise that Banchero gets the 5-year. I don't know if Paolo's my best player. I can win an NBA championship. I don't know yet. I think the jury's still out with him because he's so young. But if I was to say right now, I don't think he's the best player on the championship team. I don't know how you feel.
I don't think it's out of the question. I don't think it's guaranteed. I think there's a chance that he could be. I like what I've seen from him in terms of his the best guy. We saw him against the Cavs, and we've seen him against the Lakers. I'm sorry, against the Celtics in the playoffs, and he certainly has not been afraid to take the mantle as the guy. The knock on him so far to this point in his career has been that he's been somewhat inefficient, but part of the problem has been that the Magic's roster has been completely devoid of shooting. Franz's jumper completely has abandoned him, and KCP, when they brought him in from Denver, couldn't make threes. And I know that Zach Lowe has cited over and over again that Orlando has been in the bottom 10 in offense in the NBA for it's either 10 or 15 years straight where they haven't broken out of the bottom 10, which is kind of an amazing streak that just by accident you can't get into the top 20 offenses in the league. But the trade for Desmond Bain, who fits seemingly, at least looking at it before you see all of it working together, seemingly fits perfectly with what Orlando wants to do in terms of his ability to shoot the ball, catch and shoot, ability to shoot it off the dribble, ability to play make somewhat. I don't know that he's a point guard, but he does have the ability to run some offense. Good defender. Jalen Suggs, when he went out last year, had a huge impact negatively on the Magic. So he comes back healthy, and he's a guy who's improved his shot over the course of his brief NBA career. The Suggs Desmond Bain backcourt isn't the traditional one guy's completely a point guard, the other guy maybe is a little bit longer, rangier. Two, those guys are both kind of similarly built in terms of size and sort of just the way they play. So it's I think Banchero's a guy clearly they were going to sign him to the max extension, and I don't know that he's a guaranteed best player on a championship team. I don't know that he's a guaranteed top 5 or top 10 player in the league. But if you told me 4 years from now that he was one of the 5 best players in the league, I wouldn't be completely stunned because I think the skill and the tools at his size, both in terms of being 6'10", but also just being big and physical and able to do different things. I do think that we're going to really see over the next year or two with an improved roster. And we'll see. I think Franz's ability to shoot threes is going to have a big impact on the ceiling of this team. Like he has to be able to knock down open shots and at least not be afraid of them and get rid of the hitch and everything that was kind of going on psychologically with his 3-point shot. But I think Banchero can be that guy. I don't know if it's a guarantee, but I won't be surprised completely if he's a top 5 player at some point in his career. I think he has all the tools. You're muted, man.
Oh no, I don't know why I was muted. I must. Oh, it's because I coughed. All right, sorry. Okay, so what I was saying, the next guy to talk about is Mike Brown. How many coaching jobs has Mike Brown had, Mike? We've got the Cavs job.
You want me to go through them? Or are you going to go
Cavs
through
job. Lakers job. Cavs job again. Sacramento. And now the Knicks. Five head coaching jobs, while also being an assistant for San Antonio under Greg Popovich and being an assistant for the Golden State Warriors. And by the way, he did a great job as the assistant for Golden State because he ended up being the coach for a while, right? At one point because of Steve Kerr. And it was Walton did it and he did it in 2 separate years. So anyways, Knicks coached by Mike Brown. I mean, it's interesting. He's definitely different philosophy than Tibbs. He doesn't play his players into the ground. How will the players respond? They really didn't change the roster very much. So, what do you foresee? Do you see this being a good move for the Knicks, or is it basically a lateral move? They're different coaches, but the roster is just not good enough, or because of the way the East is structured, are you concerned at all because Mike Brown is a good coach when he wants to be?
I think Mike Brown is different from Tibbs. Is he better than Thibodeau? I don't know if I would say that. Definitely a different approach. I think when you look at where the Knicks are and you look at the Eastern Conference, you have to say that New York has as good a chance as anybody of being the Eastern Conference champions next year. Certainly, they go into next season as, at worst, I would say probably the co-favorites with the Cavs. With Mike Brown, guess I go back to a couple. Here's what I'll say. I like Mike Brown in terms of I think during his time when he was here in Cleveland, I think he did some good things. I think he helped this franchise. I think Mike Brown is a great example of a coach who evolved and grew and changed as he learned, which is a credit to him, right? When he came in with the Cavs the first time, he was a very, very defensive minded coach and a guy who maybe didn't have nearly as much creativity on the offensive end of the floor, but he got his teams, those Cavs teams, to compete and play hard. He got those teams to understand his defensive philosophy, and that raised the floor of what those early Cavs teams could be. Then he takes some time, doesn't have much success with the Lakers when he goes there, but he learns under Golden State with Steve Kerr, picks up some things offensively, goes to Sacramento eventually, and Sacramento has, I think they were ranked first or second in the NBA in offense during the time that he was there. And so there's a guy who grew and who came into the league with a reputation one direction and ended up maybe not flipping the perception, but certainly a guy who improved himself as a coach. So then you look at it and you say, okay, the Knicks hire him, and maybe he's now a guy who's in position where he combines both that offensive learning with his defensive foundation, and maybe he's really found something that now he's in the right spot. And yet, I always go back to conversations that you and I have had and sort of my thought process when it comes to coaches. I'm not a big fan of the mid-career retread guy who has kind of proven himself to be mediocre. And Mike Brown maybe is has been better than mediocre, but you could make an argument that he's been sort of a run-of-the-mill NBA coach, not necessarily one of the guys that makes a difference in their team when you get to, other than raising the floor, right? You take on a bad team and you can get it to a certain level. But I don't know that Mike Brown has been the guy who's made the difference in taking a team to the next level to make them a contender. He hasn't proven that. And so I guess I always feel like I'd rather take a chance on a guy who is in his first time as a head coach. Maybe you catch lightning in a bottle and you get somebody really good. Now that philosophy has backfired on me. I think back to the John Beeline when the Cavs hired him. That obviously didn't work. He was an outside the box candidate, a guy who was going to be a first time NBA head coach, and it didn't work. And maybe you'd have been better off with a mid career retread guy in that particular situation. But
Yep.
with the Knicks hiring Mike Brown, based on the other candidates that were out there that were actually available to the Knicks, I think Mike Brown was probably the best choice. I go back and forth with thinking about the Tibbs firing. There's a party that says, and they made it all the way to the conference finals. They've been building slowly. He's gotten better every year. Why can him now? And then at the same point, it feels like Tibbs is one of those guys that you think about players tuning him out, or you think about a guy who just wears on players and eventually they just they're not responding to him anymore. And I wonder how much of that was the case. And so maybe it was the right time for the Knicks to go. I was okay with the Tibbs firing, and I'm okay with the Mike Brown hire. I'm not jumping for joy if I'm the Knicks fan over either one of those moves, but I think in the end, at worst case, it's a neutral move and with the potential to be better just because it's a new voice.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a lateral move. I don't think this changes anything. I just think he's a different coach, but the roster is the roster, and you know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that, like you said, he's never gotten the team like over the hump, so to speak.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
I did just see this. I was scrolling just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Did you see the rumor that it sounds like Bradley Beal, when he gets bought out, is going to go to the Clippers?
I did hear that. That was part of, I think, the discussion. Zach Lowe talked about that, I believe, on his pod, that part of the Norm Powell trade, factoring in that Powell is going to leave, that opens up a slot for Bradley Beal. And I've seen a lot and read a lot about the Beal situation. And one of the things that I've kind of come to the conclusion based on just reading and listening to people talk is that what's made Bradley Beal sort of a quote laughing stock in the league is not necessarily Bradley Beal, the player. It's been Bradley Beal, the contract, right? It's you're no longer really even we're not even discussing Bradley Beal, the basketball player, and obviously at 150 million dollars, Phoenix trading for him has been a disaster. But it's really only been a disaster because Bradley Beal is making $150 million. If the Clippers are able to sign Bradley Beal for whatever the mid-level exception, the smaller of the two mid-level exceptions, which is
Couldn't they
like
just
seven
for
or
the
eight
vet
million.
min? If he gets bought out, couldn't they just sign him for the veteran minimum?
I don't know exactly. Well, I don't know exactly how, again, the rules of the cap and what maybe there'll be a bidding war and maybe they got to offer him at least that so he doesn't go somewhere else. I don't know. But if he goes to the Clippers, Bradley Beal, the player, is a helpful player for the Clippers. Now, does he make the Clippers an NBA
Yeah,
championship
if
team?
he plays and stays healthy, I mean,
Right. He's right. He hasn't been healthy, which is a big part of his problem. But when he's been on the floor, he's been a productive player. But he's just not as productive as what his contract would indicate he needs to be in order to quote earn his money. So I think that'd be a good pickup for the Clippers. And obviously, from Beal's perspective, if he goes into LA and he kind of takes over that Norm Powell role, well, Norm Powell was a borderline all-star last year who averaged 20 plus points per game. So if Bradley Beal can stay healthy and get those kind of minutes, seems like a good place for him to be. I don't know your thoughts.
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not, I'm not, I'm not holding my breath that he's going to do anything exciting, Mike. I just burned
Look,
by
the
too many
Clippers,
bridges.
we can't take the Clippers. I continue to say it and I'll say it until James Harden retires. I cannot take any team or franchise seriously when James Harden is a key part of whatever it is that you're building. You may
Yeah,
have a good regular season. James Harden did he end up making third team All NBA? I don't know if he did or he didn't, but he was close to making third team All NBA, which puts him in the top 15 to 20 players in the league range. And I continue to maintain that if he is an integral part of what you're doing, that you're never going to be able to do anything in the playoffs, regardless of what your regular season looks like. And it's been proven time and time again over the course of his career. And it'll be proven for as many more times as James Harden's teams show up in the playoffs. But Beal makes them a better team. But again, I don't think it really matters because if James Harden is an important part of your team, ultimately you're going to flame out in the playoffs because at some point you're going to need him and he is not going to come through at some point. Let's put it that way.
all right, let's I unless there's something else you want to talk about, let's just I think we kind of talked at camp today what our ending topic was going to be. So I just want to make sure, is there anything else you want to talk about, or are we just going to dive right in here?
I think we've hit pretty much everything. I guess the
Okay.
only other thing that we talked about before the pod, I asked Jason if he was getting his tickets for the big game Thursday night between Bronny's Lakers and Cooper Flag, his debut in the summer league. Are you excited?
No.
Okay. Do you remember how excited we were for Zion's debut in the summer league? I think we did like at least 2 pods leading up to it. We had
Well, it's because
episodes
of
titled
you.
Zion
I
Eve.
basically had to like hose you down there, Mike. We had to keep you calm down. You were so excited about Zion.
I'm so disappointed, man. I'm so disappointed. I'm not as excited for Cooper Flag, although I am excited to see if he lives up to the hype.
Bronny
And
has been having a good summer league though. The 2 games he's played, he's been all right. I know they're playing right now.
is he going to be a meaningful player in the NBA at any point in his career, do you think? Is he going to be, when I say meaningful, I don't mean he's going to be like a top whatever. He's not going to be the best 3 or 4 players on a
I could
team.
see him being a number 8 or a number 9 on a team. That's as high as I'm willing to go.
Does he stick in the league for 7, 8 years? That to me, I think if he can stick in the league for 7, 8 years, that to me is a successful career for Bronny.
He is not
regardless of
having a good game today, apparently. He's 1 for 5. But the other day he had a pretty good game the other day.
Does he get a second contract? Let's just ask that question. Does he get a second contract?
Is LeBron still in the league?
So on his own merits, we're questionable. But if LeBron is still in the league, he gets a second contract. I think I would probably agree with that assessment. All right, so we're heading in the LeBron direction. So go ahead and take our topic for us.
So here's the topic, and I don't know. I don't feel like we need to spend too long on this, but I guess the overarching question is, where do we think LeBron is going to be when the season starts? Let's lay it all on the table. He opted into his contract, $53 million. He's clearly stated that he knows that the Lakers are building for the future. He doesn't know that this current roster construction is the roster construction that's going to win a championship. He wants to win a championship. Even though 3 weeks ago he said, I'm not that concerned about winning championships at this point in my career. It's just, typical LeBron talking. Then this past week he was in Cleveland for a golf outing. He wore a hat at the golf outing that said "Welcome home." He posted about it. Allie Clifton, Lakers sideline or Lakers in studio host, used to be with the Cavs, posted a picture for the 4th of July saying only Jersey Day with the family, only jersey I'll ever wear. Her and her boyfriend wearing LeBron Cleveland jerseys. LeBron retweets that picture saying the only attire that's appropriate. Okay. So just doing the subtle LeBron social media stuff. Then a photo not posted by LeBron, posted by a Cavs Cavs summer league player. LeBron was in the Cavs facility, which, by the way, is allowed. Did you know that was allowed during it be based on the CBA, or did you not know that was allowed based on the CBA?
I don't know if I knew it was explicitly allowed within the CBA, but I know that we have seen players that are from hometowns that have showed up at other teams' practice facilities.
But here's the thing: LeBron was never photoed before this year.
There was never photographed, but I did read somewhere that he has come back to the Cavs practice facility or has passed through town.
He basically said, "I do it every offseason." He's like, I come home. I'm from
before. Right. He said he's done it before. So
he told on the 4th of July, he retweeted and said something along the lines of, "Gosh, you guys just don't stop. I do this every year. Go have some hot dogs," or something like that. That's what he wrote. Go have some hot dogs. Okay. So the bottom line is there's been rumors since this all went down that LeBron is seeking a buyout. Windhurst has said multiple times that 2 weeks ago he would have never thought that LeBron was not going to be on the Lakers. He feels like there's a chance that he's not going to be on the Lakers. He feels like, LeBron's been very out in social media. The Lakers have, he said today on the Really Big Show with Tony Rizzo and Aaron Goldhammer on ESPN Cleveland, Windhurst said today that the Lakers are also playing into this because they have yet to formally announce LeBron opting into the contract. So there's a little bit going both ways. There's malcontent between the two.
The question is, where will LeBron be? Obviously, the Cavs and us, if he gets bought out of the Lakers, I think we make sense. What other teams make sense? So the question, Mike, do you think he's a Laker when the season starts, or do you think he's somewhere else? That's the first question I want you, and we're pontificating. We have no intel whatsoever. We didn't talk to LeBron's barber's mom's barber or LeBron's kid's barber from Houston who talked to his cousin from Strongsville. LeBron was not shopping for homes in Strongsville with Bill Cowher this week. Like, that wasn't going on. Like, do you think LeBron is a Laker or not? That's my first question.
I'd put it at about 80%. I think he's a Laker. If I was betting, I would definitely say that him remaining a Los Angeles Laker is the most likely outcome, because from LeBron's perspective, yes, maybe the opportunity to get a buyout and then be able to choose his team is attractive. But from the Lakers' perspective, I don't know what the benefit is to the Los Angeles Lakers, because this buyout, if I'm not mistaken, well, there's definitely potential for addition by subtraction. And LeBron could be, if LeBron was willing to pull a Jimmy Butler style burn the house down, then you could definitely make the argument that addition by subtraction could be on the table. LeBron obviously has never gone that route. He is much more subtle in his passive aggressive ways of trying to maneuver and manipulate the team that he plays for to do what he wants. This is the first time in his career where clearly at this point, the Lakers are no longer building their team around LeBron or to make LeBron happy. The timeline has shifted. The focus has shifted to what do we need to do to surround Luka with the types of players that we need to win. And so that's a new position for LeBron to be in. There's just no benefit other than, to your point, if LeBron makes it uncomfortable for everyone if he stays with LA, just from a pure LeBron on the floor versus LeBron not on the floor. I don't know why the Lakers would want to pay him whatever percentage of his 53 million to go away rather than just pay him the entire 53 million and have him put up a 23 6-6 or 25 7-7 or whatever it is that he's going to put up day in and day out. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Lakers to buy him out. And so when only one side of this transaction is incentivized, then I'm not sure what the alternatives are. I'm not sure that the buyout makes a lot of sense because, in essence, because the Lakers aren't building around LeBron anymore, if LeBron's pouty or LeBron says, I don't want to be here next year, or hey, you got to trade me or whatever, Luka was the ultimate insurance policy against the Lakers having to do stupid things in order to appease LeBron. At this point, I don't think they really need to appease him in any way. And so I would be surprised if he got bought out. I don't think it's completely insane because LeBron has proven in the past that he's been able to control and get things that he wants. But I just don't see the incentive for the Lakers. Maybe there's something out there that I don't either understand about the money or something that they could do with their roster, or maybe it is as simple as addition by subtraction. But I just don't see the incentives for the Lakers to do it.
Yeah, listen, I'm blue sky in it all here. Like, I would love LeBron to be a member of the Cavs, but I don't see it. I don't see I don't see the benefit to the Lakers to just buy him out unless. And here's the deal. You said it very clearly. If he was willing to pull out a Jimmy Butler thing, LeBron is not willing to do that because he doesn't want to taint his legacy with a nonsense.
Right.
He does. I know he does this. He's just not willing to do it. And, maybe something happens and he does end up leaving, which I think is the next part of our conversation here. but I just don't see it happening. But in the event that he does leave, let's talk about possible destinations. Cleveland's obviously a possible destination, and I don't think we really need to spend a lot of time as to why it's a possible destination. It just would make sense, right? It would make sense.
It's like a glove too, in terms of what you would need at the position that the Cavs have been since this big four has come together. The small forward position has been the Cavs' weakness. The wing spot, both on the offensive and defensive end of the floor, has been a problem. And LeBron, not the same defensive player that he was at his peak, but still a guy with size, with athleticism, with smarts. And you put him next to Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and then the backcourt, obviously, that the Cavaliers have. And it all fits together. And you and I talked about it before, that if we were going to trade for him, I'm not sure how excited I would have been. If you're talking about the only thing that's going to cost the Cleveland Cavaliers is a little bit of money, and they're not going to lose anybody off their roster, and you're going to plug and play LeBron with the other big four, I'm a lot more interested in that than I was when we're talking about trading Darius Garland and Jared Allen for him, or DeAndre Hunter and Jared Allen for him. But getting him for nothing, I think, clearly benefits. And before we move on to other teams, I think the caveat here is that he's really, if he's going to get bought out, he's really only considering places where he can win a championship. I don't think there's anybody that you can look down, and we'll talk where that line is drawn, but he's not going to consider a team that's not in the running to win a championship. That's not.
He's not going back to Miami, is what you're saying. He's not going back to Miami.
He's not going back to Miami. Putting LeBron on the Miami Heat is not elevating that team into being a championship team. So
what about Milwaukee?
If you have LeBron and Giannis, does that make you a championship team? No, but it puts you a lot closer than Miami. I don't think he would go to Milwaukee, but I do think that LeBron plus Giannis doesn't make you a championship favorite, but in the Eastern Conference, it probably at least gets you in the discussion of, could we win the East with that team?
Okay.
I don't think you win the finals with that team, but go ahead.
New York Knicks, Mike, with Mike Brown as your head coach.
Yes, I could see him going to the New York Knicks. He would elevate the Knicks, who are already, as we talked about a little earlier, one of the two favorites to win the Eastern Conference Championship next year. And if you added LeBron, the same way that if you add LeBron to the Cavs, it probably pushes them over the top to some degree. I think it would probably do the same thing for the Knicks.
Okay, so I think those are the two Eastern Conference teams, and I don't think there's any other Eastern Conference teams.
He's not going to Boston, obviously, without Tatum. The Pacers without Halliburton. I don't think he's not going to go to Detroit. Or Orlando, I guess, is a team that, if you just look at the roster and you plugged LeBron in and you went with the Paolo, Franz, LeBron, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane combo, if that thing all clicked and you got the best version of everybody on that roster,
he's not going to Orlando.
I think that Orlando. No, he's not going to Orlando. But that lineup would be good enough to win the East. Not the overwhelming favorite, but that lineup could win the East.
Okay. All right. So when we were talking about it at camp today about Western Conference teams, I think there's a few suitors here. I think you mentioned Houston, with Durant. That would be intriguing. I think that would be I think that's intriguing. I think that's a spot. I think Denver's a spot that he could go play with Jokic. And the team that neither of us even mentioned, Golden State.
Golden State. Yep.
I think those are the three. I don't think there's anyone else. He's not going to go to San Antonio.
That people keep talking Dallas for some reason. I don't know why.
There's no way he didn't know that Anthony Davis was getting traded. There's no way he's going to Dallas. If Kyrie was healthy, but Kyrie said, by the way, in the live stream this week, they asked, "Will you be ready by the playoffs?" And he said, his response was, don't hold your breath. I'm older and it's taking me a lot longer to get back to where I was. So, maybe he's just under promising and going to over deliver. But if Kyrie was healthy,
Anthony Davis with the detached retina, Cooper Flag, still an unknown. Everybody seems to feel like he's going to be great, but he's still going to be an 18-year-old rookie in the NBA. To me, Dallas doesn't make sense. Golden State, I could see him wanting to play with Steph, but is Golden State, even with LeBron, a true championship contender? I would say
we got Jimmy
no.
Butler too. Forget they got Jimmy Butler, man.
Right. I get it, but I don't think that roster is enough. I don't think Butler, LeBron, and Steph at their age.
Draymond, man. Come on.
Look, they're too old. I don't think that's a championship team. Houston, on the other hand, if you have Durant and LeBron, now you're surrounded by a bunch of younger, more athletic talent that brings different things to the table than what LeBron and Durant are bringing. You're surrounded by more guys that are going to be able to get you through the regular season because of their energy, because of their youth. And then you have LeBron and KD to be able to be the closers that theoretically the Rockets didn't have this year as the number 2 seed in the West.
And Denver. Denver was the other one I mentioned. What do you think?
I mean, Denver makes a ton of sense because if you put LeBron in that lineup next to Jokic, you have two guys with supercomputer minds in terms of reading defenses,
You're basically replacing
the game.
Michael Porter Jr. with LeBron. I think that's an upgrade.
And then you have Cam Johnson also, in addition to that, as another body where we talked about it all throughout the playoffs that Denver basically had 6 guys, and one of those guys was Russell Westbrook. And so
that would guarantee Russell Westbrook not re-signing with Denver.
Correct.
If he went.
Well, I don't think he's going to go back to Denver anyway. Who knows where he's going to end up? Maybe he'll go back to Denver. I don't know. But Denver, by doing the moves that they made, they've already strengthened their roster in such a way that now you have probably 8 playable guys as opposed to 6 playable guys. And now you throw LeBron into the mix, and now you have 9 playable guys that could all compete in a playoff series. And it would just be fun to watch Jokic and LeBron play with each other and try to figure out sort of where each other likes to be on the court. And it'd be fun to see them pass the ball to one another and to have 2 A+ level passers on the floor, kind of like what I guess people envision, right, with Luka and LeBron. The difference is that Luka and LeBron both kind of need to have the ball in their hands and play that heliocentric style, whereas Jokic is much more a guy who the ball hits his hands and he's moving it. He's not a guy who's pounding it. He's the focal point of an offense, but he's also moving the ball and not hanging on to it for 24 seconds.
Yeah.
The ball moves with Jokic, and it'll be fun to see LeBron play with him. I think if you're talking about where he could make the biggest difference in terms of pushing a team over the top to winning a championship, I think the 2 locations are Denver and the Cavs. And then I think the Rockets are a step below that. And then I don't know, maybe I don't.
What about Minnesota, Mike?
See, I thought about Minnesota too, but here's the thing with Minnesota. You already have Randall, and look, Randall's not as good as LeBron, obviously, but Randall occupies the same space as LeBron, sort of a point forward type of position. Randall's a good passer, but he's a guy who needs the ball in his hands to be effective. He's not really a floor spacer where he's going to spot up off of LeBron. And so it would almost be like you'd have Randall and LeBron, and you'd be staggering minutes with those two as opposed to putting them both on the floor at the same time. I don't know that it's the best fit, and I don't know that LeBron is enough to push them over the table, or push them over the top, simply because there's kind of some overlap between LeBron and Randall and Edwards, who wants to have the ball in his hands. So I don't know if that's as good a fit. I also heard it floated somewhere that maybe you maybe there's a LeBron Kawhi trade between the Clippers and the Lakers. I don't think those two franchises would do business and swap superstars, but it's kind of interesting to think about. LeBron could stay in LA and Kawhi goes back over to the Lake, goes to the Lakers and plays with Luka. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's kind of an interesting thought exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's probably a Laker.
Cleveland or Denver. I think ultimately he's a Laker too. I mean, I think, like I said, 80% that he's a Laker.
I think my percentages would be Lakers probably about 85%.
Okay.
Cavs like 10%. Nuggets the 5% that's left. I think those are the three teams.
It's hard to envision him going to Denver. It's hard to imagine him leaving the Lakers and going anywhere but Cleveland. But like I said, I think if he were to go and sign with Denver, he would very much push them into the range of, now are they co-favorites with Oklahoma City if they get LeBron? I think there's probably a case to be made for that. Oklahoma City's probably a better regular season team. They'd probably have more wins, but come playoff time, I would like Denver's chances of beating Oklahoma City. And I think if he comes to the Cavs, like we said, he fits pretty much exactly what they need. And here's the most amazing thing about this conversation that we just had. How many years ago did I start saying that Father Time always wins? And we haven't once talked about, well, maybe LeBron, maybe LeBron's not going to perform up to the level that he's performed at in the past. At this point, we're all just kind of assuming that if he does take a step back, it's going to be these little micro steps from, maybe he's not going to average 25, 7 and 7. Maybe he's going to average 23, 6 and 6. And it's kind of amazing for us to be saying that about a 40-year-old dude. I continue to say, look, I'll never think that anybody's better than Michael Jordan, but LeBron's career, when you look at the totality of when he first came on the scene in Akron as a ninth grader, and all the accolades and all the attention and everything that he got and what he was supposed to be and the hype, and then lives up to the hype on the floor, plays 20 plus seasons at an incredibly high level, and keeps his nose clean off the floor, and is somebody who, what he's done for the league, and just, again, is he perfect? Absolutely not. But when you consider everything about him as a human being and as a basketball player, what he's accomplished is absolutely unreal. There's no way, going back to when all of us first heard about him, if you just said that his career was going to play out the way it has, there's nobody who would have bought that story. It's incredible what he's done. And it'll be interesting to see if there's another chapter in another city with another team, or does he kind of ride out the string with the Lakers, and who knows what happens there. I mean, I guess if he hangs on for a few years and they can somehow put a roster around him and Luka, that maybe there's a chance that they can somehow get back to championship contention. But there's certainly, the roster in LA as it's constructed now, unless Luka's in the absolute peak shape that he's ever been in and is ready to completely carry a team, that it's not a championship roster.
Yeah, I agree. But he's going to be a Laker, but I'm going to hold on to hope. Hold on to hope. Keep the hope alive, as you like to say.
Keep hope alive. If we can do it for nothing, except for a little bit of Dan Gilbert's money, then it's a no-brainer move. And it would be fun to inject LeBron into this team to see kind of what the impact of not just his play on the floor, but his personality and everything that goes with that, what that would do for the franchise, good or bad, positive or negative. It would be quite an interesting NBA social experiment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right. We've said it all. We've done it all, Mike.
Perfect.
Anything else you want to add?
Nope. I think we hit on everything, all the big news stories that were kind of actually small news stories comparatively. Who knows? Maybe there's one more big piece of news coming out of the summer. We shall see. But for right now, it is NBA Summer League time. So we'll be kind of watching that from afar. I'll probably check out a little bit of the Cooper Flag debut on Thursday. So we'll have that to talk about next week. And who knows, maybe something else will come down the pike. Remains to be seen. But in the meantime, thank you for checking us out tonight. Really appreciate it. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening. And we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.